Hello, everybody. I'm Ridley, and this is an idea that I've been thinking about for quite some time now. But the more time that I spend listening to metal, the more I realize one thing. Metal is incredibly honest as a genre. Brutally honest, even, some might say. Metal is the genre to go to when you're looking for music that expresses and fully accepts the darkest side of the world we live in, for better or for worse. But it all comes from a place, a very, very authentic place from within. It's a genuine expression of something that the artist personally experiences or is interested in. With subgenres like thrash metal, this is often done with the intention of saying something about the state of society. For example, bands like Sepultura, earlier Megadeth, Creator, Sacred Reich, all these bands, for example, they have themes of anti-establishment, anti-war, and sometimes even anti-imperialist themes. And this is usually more often associated with punk rock. Many metal bands embrace these ideas as well, though, using music to express the rage that they have and to bring attention to the issues that they see in our society. And this is one of the many things that I'm referring to when I say the darkest side of the world that we live in. Now, with black metal and death metal, for example, we have an exploration of the darkness of humanity, a different part of the darkness of humanity, as well as the themes of the occult. With black metal in particular, a lot of people express their fringe religious views, typically something like a left hand occult practice, which I'm, personally a fan of. Black metal stands in stark contrast to the monotheistic religions who are just very top down and try to force their ideas of what a person should be and how you have to act and all this fucking bullshit. Black metal stands in stark contrast to those monotheistic religions and the people who force that ideology down your throat. It's also pretty nihilistic in nature, with a lot of just visceral expression of anguish, just poured into the fucking squealed lyrics. And this absolute honest expression of dark emotion in this genre is something that I personally just think you can't really find anywhere else. And that's why black metal is one of my favorite subgenres of metal, just fucking across the board. Now, death metal is a subgenre that usually explores shit like horror and, horror stories, horror movies, all the fucking gambit, bro. The whole fucking gambit. And some people might think that it's inauthentic to talk about fiction, but I could not fucking disagree more, lads. I could not disagree more. Being passionate about fiction is very much authentic because all art, which includes fiction, is a fundamental part of who you are as a person. And besides that, horror stories almost always tie directly into the fears of the society that it was made in and the time it was made in. Like, one of my favorite horror movies, for example, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one. And one of the major themes of this fucking story is how automation negatively impacts the workforce and fucks everybody over. You just replace people with machines and then a bunch of people are out of fucking work, and that leads to people turning to, crazy means to fucking survive. But it also talks about disability and how fucking terrifying it is to be a disabled person in a society that isn't built for you, and how that leads to you being forced to rely on the people around you. A lot of the times it leaves you vulnerable to abusers, like in the case of Bubba, for example. He's probably like autistic, and he's forced to rely on his abusive fucking family who forces him, to be a fucking cannibal, basically. That's the only people that he's ever known, and they're the only people who, can support him. And this is, a very dark theme, that's expressed in this story, and it says something about the society that we live in. And death metal is very similar to that, even if they're not trying to say something, because of the art that they're inspired by. It just goes through into the music anyway, even if they don't want to try to say something. Because all art is just a it's a part of who you are, right? As I said in one of my previous video, um, what it does, art, is that it expresses it combines with your own internal world, and it combines with the external world. It's not just you coming up with a bunch of fucking ideas. It's like you and the world around you combine together to make something, and that is creativity, and that is what music is too. But because of that, that's why a lot of the shit that's in your head comes out in the music, and this is just a fundamental part of it. And that is, one part of the authenticity of metal, right? Another aspect of metal is the venting of aggression, transmuting it into the music and allowing others to express their own aggression in a constructive way. The so-called negative emotions, like anger, are heavily demonized in our society to the point where people suppress it. And that creates a lot of problems. People who are just unable to control their anger because they can't express it, that leads to just a lot of fucking terrible shit. But metal says fuck you to all of that and just fucking expresses it anyway. And that brutal, honest challenging of social norms is something that I love so much about metal. That is the number one thing I love about metal. So, I hope you enjoyed this video and keep blasting loud fucking music. Peace.